Welcome to the first video of 2023 on this channel. This year has started with a great blessing. My ninth book just got published. It is called The Alcoholic Man-Eater of Didihat and Other Stories. It's a collection of short stories from Kumaon and Garhwal Himalayas, which is where I live. We are in January now, and it's a very special month for me personally because it was exactly 4 years ago that my family and I moved to the mountains, to Uttarakhand. 4 years in the mountains, and I have a rich collection of stories, friends, experiences, and some of it is documented in this book. This is just volume 1, by the way. There's more coming. I just wanted to share this with you because I don't know if you've heard about it, but this beautiful land, this beautiful region is slowly crumbling. Of late, you may have heard of places like Joshi Mutt sinking and Karnaprayag going the same way. It's been all over the Indian news media. The Himalayas and the lush rainforests that support life in this region, both people and wildlife, are now officially under threat. And I can tell you that this region has an extremely delicate ecological balance that is now being threatened by a number of different reasons, which I will not go into in this video, simply because that's not my area of expertise. All I can do is hope that this book will give some insight into how the local hill people or the Paharis have lived in harmony with this fragile ecosystem for generations. And I hope that these stories will also shed some light on the current human-wildlife conflict that is taking place in this region. This stunning picture you see in front of you, this one, is a part of Uttarakhand. This is a picture of Chamoli, which features in the story that I'm about to read to you from this collection of short stories. This story also moves through the regions in and around Karnaprayag, which have also been in the news lately. Before I begin narrating the story about the man-eating leopard of Dewalkot, I have to tell you honestly that this has to be one of the strangest and most fascinating real-life stories that I have ever written. It is based on true Shikar expeditions which took place between 2006 and 2007. This is leopard country. Now, a wild leopard is an incredibly glorious and majestic animal, and you will never come across a more beautiful creature. There is no conflict of interest with 99% of the leopards who hunt wild game in the lush jungles of the Himalayan foothills. The trouble only arises when one leopard out of hundreds becomes a man-eater. And a single man-eater can create havoc, take multiple lives, and terrorize a large area. At the last wildlife census in 2014, the total leopard population of Uttarakhand was found to be 2,335 leopards. Now, this is not to be confused with snow leopards. They live at a higher elevation above the snow line, and their population is much lower at about 121. Needless to say, that the leopard population has since increased over the past decade, since 2014, which is not a problem, because out of the thousands of harmless leopards, the problem is the fraction, the mere 1%, that become man-eaters. And while we are collectively proud that there are so many leopards in Uttarakhand, I must also inform you that since the turn of the century, from the year 2000 onwards, conservative estimates state that over 600 human beings, mostly children, have been killed by man-eating leopards here. That's right. I had no idea this was happening in the mountains till I came to live here. I had no idea that entire villages in Pauri have become ghost villages because people were terrorized by these man-eaters to such an extent that they left their ancestral villages to raise their children in safer places. This mass exodus continues to this day. Most people living in the cities are not aware that there is such a gripping human-wildlife conflict going on in this region. And I wasn't either until I moved here and started doing research for this book. What can I say? One lives and learns. Now, I got the sequence of the events for the Shikar expedition from a conversation with one of our living legends in Uttarakhand, namely Lakhpat Singh Rawat. I can safely say that he's an extraordinary shikari come wildlife conservationist who has shot 55 man-eaters in Uttarakhand in a period ranging from 2002 till date, 2023, as I record this. Yes, you heard the number right. 55 official recorded man-eater kills. Now, this is Lakhpat Singh Rawat, and this is Virendra Singh, his helper, and this gorgeous leopard is the Nayar Valley man-eater. Sadly, he turned into a man-eater and he had to be brought down. This Nayar Valley story is also there in the book, okay? But this man-eating leopard was as big as a tiger. At 8 feet long and 3 feet tall, this leopard was the largest recorded man-eating leopard ever shot in history. And the Nayar Valley Shikar story is also included in this book, along with the incredibly fascinating Shikar story of the alcoholic man-eater of Didihat. Now, that leopard only went after drunkards because he himself was a bit of an alcoholic. Well, that's a fascinating story by itself, and that's why I saw fit to make it the title of this collection of short stories. Let me bring that back on screen. So this chap here was the man-eater of Didihat. Okay. Now, as I already told you, Mr. Rawat is a great wildlife conservationist. In his words, which I've translated from Hindi, he told me that if I don't shoot the single man-eater who is terrorizing an area by abducting and devouring children and adults, then many innocent leopards who also live and roam in that same vicinity will be trapped and brutally tortured and killed to pay the price for a single man-eater's crimes. Every time I shoot one man-eater, I save the lives of at least 6 to 10 innocent leopards who also roam in the same area where the man-eater operates. And he is right, because when an innocent child is taken by a man-eater, a man-eating leopard, terror strikes the populace. And in their anger and in their quest for revenge, they can lash out ferociously against all carnivora in the region. And unless that man-eating leopard is tracked professionally, by professionals like Mr. Rawat and killed, villagers have been known to burn down hectares of forests, destroy innocent wildlife, put out homemade booby traps, and kill, torture, sometimes even burn alive any leopard they find, irrespective of whether it's a man-eater or not. This is a sad fact for any animal lover to know, but as a mother, I can understand the fury of this retaliation too. Now, what would you or I do if we lost our precious child who was simply playing outside to a leopard and then came upon that beloved child's brutally mangled, half-eaten dead body a mile away from the house? Tell me, what would we do? So there are two sides to this human-wildlife conflict in Uttarakhand. There are always two sides to everything. And it's a grim reality that both people and wild animals in these hills must live with. With that said, let me begin the story. This short story is called The Silent Terror of Dewalkot. Of all the places in this stunning landscape, Chamoli is often regarded by travelers as one of the most intensely beautiful locales in Uttarakhand, and Dewalkot village nestles right at the heart of Chamoli. And this shikar, or hunting episode, took place in and around Dewalkot, as I mentioned, between 2006 and 2007, and was gifted to me in a point-wise, point-by-point page timeline format by my friend and shikar guru Lakhpat Singh Rawat. So I took this opportunity to build his point-by-point shikar timeline in Hindi into a full-blooded story in English. And once again, I promised him, really, I had to promise him that I would employ the best of my literary capabilities to share his timeline, which has now morphed into a powerful and moving real-life shikar story, without distorting any of the facts of this shikar. The following events did take place, and they took place exactly in the same sequence in which they are narrated in this story. Now, it was autumn in the mountains, beautiful time in the hills. The time of the year when the festival of lights, Deepavali, was being celebrated in the villages nestled in these mountains. Homes were decorated by strings of flower garlands and lights. Sweet and savory snacks were being prepared by the women of the households to be shared with family and friends. Courtyards had colorful rangolis, geometric patterns made from colored chalk and filled with different colored flower petals. Children were running about, bursting firecrackers with gleeful shrieks of excitement. Adults were socializing with each other. Everyone wore their finest clothing. It was a time of great joy and festivity. Just as Christmas is celebrated in the Western world, Deepavali is celebrated in these mountains in India. 21st of October 2006 was the night of Choti Deepavali, or the eve of Deepavali. By nightfall, all the villages in the valley were twinkling with diyas. Now, diyas are the earthenware lamps with wicks dipped in ghee and set out on verandas, courtyards, and the compound walls of homes. With these lit diyas in every home, in every village, the valley looked like a bride decked up for her groom, all glowing and beautiful. Can you picture that? Thousands of little lights twinkling like stars in the valley. How beautiful it must have been. Matiala Bazaar. Now that's bazaar is a marketplace, as most of you know. Matiala Bazaar in the valley had also been decorated with strings of light and flowers by the merchants. Now Ajit was one of the shopkeepers in Matiala Bazaar. His 12-year-old son, along with some of his friends, had come down to the bazaar to buy some firecrackers. After getting his son firecrackers and shutting shop for the day, Ajit wanted to spend some time drinking with his buddies in the bazaar. So he told his son to carry on and head home along with the other boys and informed them that he would follow shortly. Their home was at Pave village, which was a 4-kilometer walk up from the bazaar through the mountain path. The steep path was surrounded by a dense oak forest all the way up to Pave for the entire 4-kilometer stretch. So picture this, your bazaar is somewhere here, somewhere down here, and the village is somewhere up there. And you have to go through this dense oak forest all the way for 4 kilometers. Okay. Carried away by the festive atmosphere, Ajit had one drink too many with his friends and was very lightheaded by the time he took their leave and started his long walk home up to Pave. He knew that his old mother, his wife, and 3 children would all be waiting for him at home to begin the festivities of the evening. But as Ajit was not a regular drinker, when he started walking up the steep mountain path, he felt extremely sick. The overconsumption of alcohol made him feel dizzy and nauseous. He stopped midway to take some rest and to regain his stability, but it did not help. He threw up violently, after which he curled up by the side of the mountain path and passed out in the midst of that dense oak forest. Now, this happened at the worst possible time for him because a large male leopard was just, he just happened to be passing by the same way at the same time in search for prey. Now, we have no way of knowing what happened that night. All we know is that there were no man eating leopards in that area, just regular leopards who took care to avoid humans. There no record. There was no record of man eating leopard in that area at the time. Perhaps seeing Ajit asleep, the leopard stopped to sniff him and pawed him, okay, out of curiosity. We don't know if Ajit got up and screamed and the leopard got scared and attacked him, or if the leopard simply carried him away finding an easy prey. But we do know that the leopard took him 100 meters into the oak forest and started eating him because that is where they found his half-eaten remains when the search party from the village went out to look for him. And we do know that Ajit became the first recorded human kill of this leopard, who would eventually go down in history as the notorious silent terror of Dewalkot. Exactly a month after this incident, on 21st of November 2006, a mother and son had attended a wedding at Pindavali village and they were walking home together. Their home was in a village called Bharat, which was about 7 kilometers away from Pindavali by road. But as the crow flies, it was only about 5 kilometers away. Now, local hill people or the Pahadis often take shortcuts called pagdandis or narrow dirt paths cut through the forest to save time when traversing this sort of mountain terrain on foot. For the main roads are winding and take a longer and more circuitous route through the mountains. Somewhere along the way, the mother stopped to answer a call of nature and told her 11-year-old son Surendra to stay on the path and wait for her while she went into the forest to relieve herself. The boy stood alone and obediently awaited his mother's return. Again, we don't know what exactly transpired, but when the mother came out back onto the path where she had left her son, there was no sign of the boy. But with a Pahari woman's keen observation, when she saw leopard pug marks behind the boy's footprints, she understood what had happened. Calling repeatedly for her boy and receiving no answer, she ran the rest of the way to get help from the men in the village. Later, when the forest officers conducted their investigations, it was found that the man eater had stalked the mother and son for most of the way, and when the mother had left her son standing alone on the path, he had taken this opportunity to attack the child from behind. He had killed and then carried the boy away without a single sound from either party. The mother had heard absolutely nothing in the stillness of the jungle. She later said that what truly terrified her was the soundless way that the stealthy predator, this evil creature as she called him, had abducted her son. The boy's half-eaten remains were found in the forest, just 100 meters away from the spot from which the leopard had snatched the child. They also found the pug marks were an exact match to the pug marks that were recorded at the you know, first kill site near Pave village, where Ajit had been taken by the leopard. Okay, 2 human kills in 2 months by the same animal was more than enough for the chief wildlife warden of Uttarakhand to declare this leopard a man-eater and issue a kill permit. As hunting permits were being given to trusted shooters who worked in tandem with the Indian Forest Services, Lakhpat Singh Rawat too he was contacted too and invited by the Forest Services to shoot this man-eating leopard. Mr. Rawat and his team arrived the very next day on 22nd of November 2006 at Pindavli village. On the same Pagdandi or narrow path through the forest where the child was taken, they located a sturdy tree and built a machan on it. They also tied a goat to another tree, which they could view clearly from the machan. By 4:30 p.m., Mr. Rawat and his helper had taken their seats on the machan with the rifle and the searchlight and sent everyone else away. The sky was overcast and there was a chill wind blowing. Soon it started drizzling. Pindavli, being at a high elevation, was extremely cold at night. After 2 a.m., it became even colder. Ice and frost started forming on the leaves around them and on the ground below. Their hands had gone numb with the cold. The goat had stopped bleating and had curled up and gone to sleep on a bed of straw and dry leaves that they had made for him under the other tree. Visibility was poor, and by 4 a.m., a chill wind started howling through the trees. As dawn broke, they got down from the tree where they had spent an awfully cramped, very chilly and uncomfortable night and untied the goat. Despite the high level of discomfort, Mr. Rawat said he would have done it all over again in order to rid this area of the man-eater. But that night, the leopard never showed up. Then the 2 men and the goat walked back on the white frost-covered jungle path to Pindavli village. On 23rd and 24th of November, they decided to take the forest department's jeep and scan the surrounding forest areas with their professional searchlights, but failed to locate the leopard. On 25th, they saw some leopard pug marks by the forest road, but on closer inspection, they found that these pug marks belonged to a female leopard. The next few days also went by in similar fruitless searches. On 28th, the Shikar team left for Pape village, where the first kill had taken place. On the way to Pape, they finally had some luck. The man-eater's pug marks were clearly visible on the wet pagdandi that went all the way to Kirsal through the forest. Now, Kirsal is another place. In the hope that the leopard considered this his territory now and would definitely return to pay, they carried out nightly searches on the roads, built a machan on that Pagdandi to Kirsal, and did patrolling in turns, but had no luck. By 5th December, after 2 weeks on the road and sleepless nights, Mr. Rawat and his team decided to pack up and head home to Garsen to await news of the next incident. Now, Mr. Rawat works as a teacher for the Ministry of Education for the government of Uttarakhand, and he had to get back to work as well. Now, on 14th December and 16th December, they received the sad news that two little girls were killed by the man-eater in Seoli and Khankar villages, respectively. Both villages were in Pauri, and although both were only at a distance of 10 kilometers from Pindavali, they could do nothing, as these villages were outside the jurisdiction of Chamoli, and the hunting permit did not allow them to shoot in Pauri, which fell under a different district administration. But as luck would have it, on 21st of January 2007, exactly 3 months from his first kill at Pave, the leopard struck once more in Chamoli. This time he targeted a 40-year-old woman called Chakori Devi at Bhatmawali village. This village is about 15 kilometers from Dewalkot. Chakori Devi had finished milking the cows for the evening and had just returned to her courtyard at about 7 p.m. when the silent terror struck once again. And yet again there was absolutely no sign, no sound from either the leopard or his victim. So much so that several of her family members who were sitting in the front room of the house, just 7 feet from the courtyard beyond a thin mud wall, heard absolutely nothing. Just as his second victim, 11-year-old Surendra, had been abducted soundlessly, that his mother had no clue that an attack had even taken place. From such incidents, this man-eater started getting the reputation of being so stealthy that he was called the silent terror in that region. Since there had been no sound at the time of the attack, no one realized that Chakori Devi was even missing for another half hour. But as it got darker and her family started worrying, they started looking for her. After all, there was a man-eater roaming the area, so people were on high alert. Meanwhile, the man-eater had dragged Chakori Devi into some thick bushes just 25 meters away from the courtyard and had started eating her without wasting any time. Within 30 minutes, he had eaten more than half of the woman's body. And he kept on eating silently in the darkness, even as people were searching for her just meters away from him. Mr. Rawat later said that he had shot so many man-eaters, but was yet to come across a leopard to match this silent terror's stealth and daring. By 2 p.m. the next day, Mr. Rawat and his Shikar team had reached Chaurasen by road. From Chaurasen, they had to go on foot because there was only a narrow dirt road that went all the way to Bhatmawali village. Mr. Rawat felt sure that if he could build a machan close to the human kill, the leopard would definitely come back to finish the other half of his kill and himself be killed the same night. But on reaching Bhatmawali, his hopes fell as he saw hundreds of people from nearby villages had gathered around Bhatmawali to view the gruesome remains of Chakori Devi. Now there was absolutely no hope that the man-eater would return to his kill under such circumstances. So he gave up the idea of building a machan in that location. The Shikar team decided that they would be better off patrolling the area with searchlights at night. And this they did, all the way from Chaurasen to Jaket, covering at least 10 kilometers in that forested area. But they found no sign of the man-eater. By the morning of the 23rd, they had returned to the forest guardhouse. Now the night had been very cold, and after many overcast days, the sun had finally come out. The entire Shikar team now sat outside the forest guardhouse, enjoying the warmth and comfort of the sun. After another cold, long night out in the open hunting the man-eater, they sat around and discussed the possibilities that the man-eater, as per his past pattern, may have quite possibly moved away another 10 to 15 kilometers after this kill. They were just discussing this when the forest guard's wireless crackled and came to life. The forest SDO, a sub-divisional officer, told them that the silent terror had struck again at Karsain village in Karnaprayag. This time he had silently abducted and killed a 14-year-old girl, a teenager called Preeti, from right outside her home, and he had taken her body into the jungle. Once again, her family had heard nothing. This leopard had carried her off in complete silence. The forest officers had just found her remains. Mr. Rawat advised the SDO and the forest team at Kharsain not to disturb the girl's body in any way and not to disturb the area around the kill. Secondly, he asked them to keep the crowds away from the body this time so that the issue they faced at Bhatmawali would not be repeated. Thirdly, he requested them to post 2 forest guards with rifles near the body to prevent any interference from the public or other wild animals in the forest. Lastly, he also requested them to make a machan for him and keep it ready as they would not have time to make one for themselves because the Shikar team was still at Chorasan and could only reach Kharsan by 4 p.m. if they left immediately. The SDO agreed to do the needful. Now Kharsan village was right across the ridge on the other side of the mountain that they could see 2 peaks away from the mountain that they were currently on. And although it was only 10 kilometers away as the crow flies, to get there by taxi on the winding mountain roads, it would take them over 2 hours to reach the place. 23rd January 2007 also happened to coincide with Basant Panchami, a festival that marks the preparation of the arrival of spring in the mountains. It also acts as a marker or a countdown of exactly 40 days to the festival of Holi. And as it is considered one of the auspicious days of the year, many hill weddings are conducted on this particular day. Unfortunately for the Shikar team, it meant that due to the multitude of crowds that were attending multiple weddings in that area, they were unable to get any form of transport till nearly 4 p.m. Desperate to get some transport, they finally got a taxi, who was willing to take them to Kharsain, but for triple the normal price. When Mr. Rawat informed the taxi driver that they had to get there on urgent for forest business and that it was a matter of life or death as they were stalking a man-eater, the taxi driver shrugged his shoulders and told them, meh, take it or leave it. As far as he was concerned, he was going to make hay while the sun shone, and if they didn't like it, they could lump it, and so could the man-eater. Giving in to his blackmail and given no other choice, they finally took the taxi out of desperation. Once they were on the main road, they were stuck intermittently in traffic jams, and Mr. Rawat was hoping beyond hope that they would reach Kharsain before dark. But that was not to be. In the winters, the sun sets around 5:30 p.m. in the mountains. By the time they reached Karnaprayag, the sun had already set and would take another half hour to reach their destination in Kharsain. Feeling defeated, well, naturally, because if you're going to sit up in a machan, you need to get there before the leopard does, isn't it? Feeling defeated, Mr. Rawat finally reached the forest ranger's place by 6 p.m. But he was in for further disappointment. The forest ranger informed him that they hadn't built a machan because they could not find a suitably sturdy tree near the body. And this saddened Mr. Rawat as he could plainly see several trees which were well within his .315 telescopic rifle shooting range near the body. However, there was no time left for his team to build a machan now. He would just have to make do and find a suitable spot to sit on the ground, which, as you could tell, was not a very appealing prospect, considering that they were dealing with a man-eater, that to a man-eating leopard. Plus, he would not get the advantage of a clear shot that he could have gotten from the higher vantage point of the machan. But he was not about to give up now. He had seen the horrifically mangled remains of Chakori Devi, and now Preeti's remains were in front of him. It was hard to believe that this mutilated mass of flesh had once been a pretty, lively young teenager with a whole life ahead of her. A life that had been cut short brutally by this animal for whom she had simply been a lump of meat. Preeti's gruesome remains did not even look human any longer. He told me that the leopard had taken her face away. He had seen what this leopard could do to human beings, and he was going to shoot it, come what may. The forest ranger told him that the bushes had been cut around the area, and there was a large rock about 150 meters from the remains, against which he could sit. Some of the cut bushes had been placed in front of the rock to camouflage the Shikar team too. A camouflage cage had been set up on the other side of the path to catch the leopard if he ran in that direction. They had also attached a tiny bell to the body so that the shikaris would hear it ring if the leopard started eating the body or attempted to move the body. When Mr. Rawat reached the rock with his companion, who would be operating the searchlight, he realized that there were three other people already seated there behind some camouflage. So here's the body, here's the rock, and they put these bushes, and these men are sitting against the rock with just bushes in front of them for camouflage. So one of them was an old friend, a shooter named Rakesh Vartal. Mr. Rawat sent the other two men off. Then he and Vartal spoke in hushed whispers, and Mr. Vartal told him that some time ago the leopard had jumped up on this rock, seen him and fled. Right behind them. The leopard had jumped up, seen him and fled. Upon hearing this, Mr. Rawat's heart sank again. Surely this leopard would now avoid coming back to the kill. But he decided that now that he was there, he would wait and see, all the same. By 7 p.m. it was pitch dark, and a biting cold wind was whipping through the forest, creating strange and eerie sounds as it moved through the tops of the trees. They had to squint and focus their eyes to even see the body. After some time, the wind calmed down, but the temperature dropped even further, and Mr. Rawat told me he had to grip his rifle tightly and use all his mental strength to stop his teeth from chattering from the cold. At the same time, every time the leaves rustled near them or they heard the slightest sound, they went on high alert. Another hour went by without any sign of the leopard. They sat in complete silence. Mr. Rawat was just beginning to think that this leopard would not come back when he heard a sound. It was a very subtle yet strange sound, like a piece of silk or smooth fabric, swishing against something. He listened intently and heard it again. Was the leopard near the body? But the tiny bell that had been tied to the body had not rung, so it could not be. Another 10 minutes passed. He heard the sound again. In a flash, he realized what that sound was. He knew that the leopard was near the kill, right in front of them, and he was licking something contentedly. This time, he slowly brought the rifle up to his shoulder and nudged his companion who was holding the searchlight, and upon this prearranged signal his companion turned on the light. The light shone upon the body, and the area around it was illuminated. They saw the leopard sitting about a meter away from the body, to the right, just to the right. He was quietly chewing and licking the blood from the severed leg of the girl. The leopard was facing them with his gruesome meal in front of him. Before the leopard had time to react, Mr. Rawat pulled the trigger, and staying true to his reputation of being the top shooter of Uttarakhand, his shot hit the leopard squarely at the center of his forehead with unerring accuracy at a distance of 150 meters. The leopard's head slumped forward, and he stayed motionless. The leopard was dead. But this leopard had maintained his silent reputation till the very end. They had not heard a single sound from him the entire time he had been sitting in front of them eating the kill. And he had severed a leg from the kill in complete silence. They had not heard a single bone being crunched. It was uncanny. Mr. Rawat still shudders when he thinks about this particular leopard. Never before and never after has he come across such a stealthy animal in his entire career of hunting man-eaters. And thanks to him, the silent terror of Dewalkot, who had mercilessly and silently taken the lives of 3 children, 1 teenager and 2 adults, had finally been silenced once and for all. The end. So that was the, not so short story. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed narrating it. And I'm quite sure that you will enjoy the other not so short stories in this book as well. I'll leave links for the book below in the description box and in the pinned comment. Do like and share this video with other wildlife shikar and shikar story lovers. I'll take my leave now. and God bless you all.